What triggered Israel's onslaught on Gaza? The stated goal? To eliminate Hamas, to eliminate terrorists, to root out terrorism. But tell me, does this look like the face of a terrorist? Or this one? Or this one? What about her? Or them? You've heard the headlines: war on Hamas, self-defense, security operation. But let's strip away the sound bites for a second. Because in Gaza, security looks like a newborn gasping for breath. Defense looks like a father burying all 9 of his children. And justice looks like babies starving, slowly and silently. What do you call it when over 13,000 children are killed and 14,000 children are on the brink of death? Not because of drought, not because of disease, but because one country decided to bomb the daylights out of a strip of land and then blocked the aid and food for the survivors. A famine? No. This is not nature's cruelty. This is a war crime. Because what's unfolding in Gaza is a man-made starvation campaign. And the smallest bodies are taking the biggest blows.
الحين احنا الحمد لله بعد ما حصلنا على التكية وانتم شايفين عدد الاطفال عندي، وعندي هذه بنت اخوي مشلولة، عندي هذه بنتي مريضة قلب وربو تشعبي وكهرب في المخ، فيش عندها نمو، عمرها 7 سنين، وزنها 11 كيلو. الحمد لله زي ما انتم شايفين هذا منه فطور وغداء وعشاء، الحمد لله بعد ما حصلنا على التكية.
As of May 2025, UN officials say 14,000 children could die within days if food and medicine don't reach them. That's not a warning, that's a death sentence waiting to be signed. And who's holding the pen? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, also known as Bibi. Over 930,000 children, that's 93% of Gaza's entire child population, are now at risk of famine. Let that number sit with you. That's not just a humanitarian crisis, that's a generational erasure. And Israel? Israel is calling this controlled aid. Prime Minister Netanyahu says he'll allow only a minimal basic bridge of supplies, just enough to avoid headlines of outright famine. Just enough to keep the US from cutting its aid check. But not enough to save lives, not enough to stop babies from dying.
نقوم يوميا بطبخ ما يقارب 500 وجبة لهذا المخيم، ولكن أعداد النازحين تتزايد، وبسبب إخلاءات الجيش الإسرائيلي في جباليا وبيت لاهيا وبيت حنون يتزايد النزوح إلى هذه المنطقة. نقوم بطبخ 500 وجبة، ولكن الأعداد تأتي بالآلاف، وجميع الناس هنا في هذه المنطقة يعتمدون بشكل أساسي على طبخ هذه التكية، ونصف الناس الذين يأتون إلى هنا ليأخذوا نصيبهم من التكية يرجعون خالون الوفاض.
And now there's a new player in Gaza's aid game, a US-backed entity called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF. Set up in Switzerland, GHF is planning to start operations by the end of May, working with private American security and logistics firms, not the UN, not traditional NGOs. Why not the UN? Because the United Nations has flat out refused to participate, calling the GHF plan politically compromised, militarized, and a move that makes starvation a bargaining chip. Under this new model, aid would only be distributed from a few secure sites in southern Gaza. Critics say this is not just logistically flawed, but deliberately excludes the elderly, orphaned, and disabled who can't travel. So here's the question. When you control food supply to a population of starving children, is that security policy, or is that state-sanctioned cruelty?
The use of starvation as a weapon of war is a clear war crime. Every single child in Gaza today is at risk of famine. And what we have been hearing from the ground is absolutely harrowing reports. Families are being forced to feed their children everything from animal feed, flour ground up in sand, leaves, grass, whatever they can find just to keep their children alive. And the entire Gaza Strip is at risk of famine.
Let's talk about what minimal aid looks like on the ground. It means children surviving on leaves, adults skipping 3 days of meals to feed a toddler, mothers trying to breastfeed while they themselves are starving. And every aid agency from the UNRWA to WHO says the same thing. This isn't an accident. This is a strategy. Aid is being used as a weapon of war. And under international law, that's called a war crime. According to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, the right to food is non-negotiable. It's not a maybe, not a bonus, not a debate. And yet, right now, in Gaza, food is being negotiated like it's a military asset, and children are collateral. Let's call it what it is. This is forced famine. This is weaponized starvation. This is collective punishment, but it gets worse. The entire Gaza Strip will soon be under Israeli military control. That's what Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu said on the 22nd of May. His conditions to end the war? The release of all Israeli captives, the complete disarmament of Hamas, the exile of Hamas leadership, and a plan originally outlined by US President Donald Trump to effectively expel Palestinians from Gaza.
אני מוכן לסיים את המלחמה, בתנאים ברורים שיבטיחו את ביטחון ישראל. כל החטופים חוזרים הביתה, החמאס מניח את נשקו, יורד מהשלטון, הנהגתו מוגלת מהרצועה, כלומר מי שישאר ממנה, עזה מפורזת לחלוטין מנשק, ואנחנו מבצעים את תוכנית טראמפ. תוכנית כל כך נכונה וכל כך מהפכנית.
Mr. Netanyahu openly referenced Trump's controversial Riviera of the Middle East proposal. Many nations and rights groups have condemned it as ethnic cleansing. A plan to hand control of Gaza to the US, uproot its Palestinian residents, and reshape the region by force? And it's being enforced on the ground through relentless military attacks. A US-controlled beachfront fantasy built on the rubble of displacement and blood. Meanwhile, the bodies are still warm in Khan Yunis. Diplomats fumble for euphemisms. Children are dying waiting for rice. Not rockets, rice.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
Bibi, did you know what happened to Dr. Hamdi al-Najjar, a physician in Khan Yunis? He was home with his 10 children when an Israeli airstrike hit. 9 of them were killed. The youngest just 7 months old, the oldest 12. Dr. al-Najjar is now in Nasser Hospital injured and grieving. His wife is a doctor too. They dedicated their entire being to saving lives, and Israel's war took all but one of theirs. Global community is watching. They're condemning it. But watching and condemning isn't enough when children are dying because of watching. Bibi, I hope you're aware that over 13,000 children have died in Gaza. Parents are seen carrying bodies of their kids in plastic bags. I won't show you the images, not because they aren't real, but because they're too devastating to look at. And yet, they're everywhere. But if you want a proof of the horrific scenes, they're readily available on social media platforms and on news websites. I still haven't been able to unsee most of those images. What's more concerning is that the world's silence has become part of the machinery. Although countries like France, the UK and Canada have threatened sanctions on Israel if they continue their cruel offensive. So while the headlines debate aid corridors, security logistics and humanitarian pauses, here's the unvarnished truth. Children are not dying because of war. They're dying as a weapon of war. You don't pause starvation. You don't negotiate baby formula. You don't use food as a bargaining chip unless you see those lives as expendable. Make no mistake, what Hamas did on the 7th of October 2023 was nothing short of a terrorist attack. In fact, it was a terrorist attack. But that doesn't justify to what Netanyahu is doing to millions of people in Gaza. Sympathy can't be used as a license to kill, killing thousands of babies and children that are struggling to get some food. And until the aid flows freely, Mr. Netanyahu's maximalist war plans will continue to write the death sentence for Gaza's most vulnerable. Bibi says Hamas is using children as human shields. But if that's true, why not let them out? Why not open the Rafah crossing or the Beit Hanun gate? Or even the Karim Abu Salim passage? Why seal every exit and then blame the ones trapped inside for being in the line of fire? There's a reason why Gaza is still called the world's largest open prison. You don't get to lock the doors, put the house on fire, and then call the children inside human shields. To the powers preaching about revamping Gaza into a holiday hub without Palestinians, ask yourself, what side are you on when children die from hunger with a mouthful of dust? So tell me, is this a war on terror or a war that becomes terror? Because when a government turns food into a weapon, when babies die waiting for rice, not rockets, when children starve with the dust of bombed homes in their mouths, that's not collateral damage. That's deliberate. That's not security. That's state-sanctioned cruelty. This isn't about Hamas anymore. This is about a system that sees Palestinian lives as negotiable and children as bargaining chips. So the question now is not whether this is a humanitarian crisis or not. The question is how many more children must starve before the world decides it's a crime? How's that for a point of view? Thank you for watching India Today Global.